trying to use things outside of myself to fill voids, and that can leave you in compromising situations. Haiku, everything I need is on the inside of me. I am overflow. Hello, welcome to Patiently Moving. I'm your host, Candace J. Dunkley, and today we are talking about defining self-love. Because I thought to myself, how can I have a whole show dedicated to teaching self-love if we don't really define what it is? If you missed the description of what the show is about, I'm linking it up here somewhere. So moving on, I just want to make things really clear before we get into it, that while I'm teaching self-love, I do not have self-love all figured out. What I do have is determination to love myself better each and every day, which is why as I learn self-love, I want to teach it to others. And here's why. As I went on through my life, I realized that I had become addicted to looking like I was okay instead of being okay. I cared more about what other people thought of me than what I actually thought of me. Have you ever been through that? Have you ever been super self-conscious because you were always wondering what someone is thinking, and then you're basing decisions off of that, and it's like, no, life's too short. We don't got time. We don't got time for all of that. We have to live the life that God called us to live. And here's the danger of not having self-love. I realized that I didn't know that I had issues with self-love, issues with self-worth, issues with self-acceptance. I'm out here trying to fill voids. I'm staying in relationships longer than I need to be staying in them, not even realizing that, it took me years after the relationship was over to realize I was in an emotionally abusive relationship. I'm putting up with situations I shouldn't be putting up with. I'm putting up with relationships I shouldn't be putting up with. Staying in jobs longer than I should be staying at because I'm trying to use things outside of myself to fill voids, and that can leave you in compromising situations. So I'm here today to tell you that, look, you are amazing. You are deserving of self-love. And every time we dare to love ourselves, our cup becomes even more full and leaves us even more able to love the next person, to love the world, and to really show up as our true selves. Self-love is a journey. The journey can be messy sometimes, but that's okay. I said to myself, how can I have a whole show based on self-love if we don't have a framework, a foundation for what self-love is? So based on what I have learned, this is the definition that I have come up with. Like I said, I want to have a platform where we learn from each other. So feel free to drop in the comments what you've learned, what you think about what I'm saying so far, all of that, because we're learning from each other. And also topics you want to hear in the future. Self-love is a radical journey in acceptance, honesty, empathy, and celebration. So first, acceptance. It is imperative that we accept ourselves. And I want to be clear, acceptance is not the same as complacency. So accepting yourself means that you recognize who you are, your flaws, and your strengths, and you accept it. And I say strengths because sometimes we don't want to accept our strengths because we're afraid to take up space. It's time for us to shine. We accept our greatness and we proudly learn, and I say learn because it's not always easy, but we learn to take up space. But also we accept our weaknesses. We accept our challenges. We accept that just like every other human being on this earth, we have flaws and obstacles to overcome. So an example is when I was diagnosed with ADHD. That helped me to really accept myself. And I want to say this. One thing that I think is helpful is in the journey of acceptance to get knowledge. Understand who you are. One thing, therapy has been instrumental in getting me to understand who I am. So at first I'd be like, what's wrong with me? Why do I do the things that I do? And I would feel like a failure sometimes. And it would be it's not good for your self-esteem. But when I learned that there are other people dealing with what I'm dealing with, then I can not only speak life to myself, but stick up for myself. Because sometimes well-meaning people will say things to you and they're just thinking you're not working hard enough, or you're just not, you just need to do better, or just think positive. And it's like, no, I need help. And so when you know what the issue is, you can seek the help. I remember my brother sending me, I was going through a time and he just kept sending me like all these videos about ADHD, and learning about this helped me to understand, accept myself, and also, and in that I could game plan, I could strategize. I eventually got an ADHD coach. One thing people with ADHD deal with is time blindness. So I remember just setting timers for everything. And I was more productive when I did this, but I felt like there were clocks going off, every 5 seconds, and I felt chaotic. And I remember thinking, do I have to do this? Is all this necessary? I remember working in offices. I didn't hear everyone else's alarm clock going off every 5 minutes. Why do I have to do this? But when I accepted it, it made things better. Like, yes, I do have to time out everything I do, because I don't always realize how much time is passing by or how long things take. And that's okay, because you know what? While I may struggle with time sometimes, I'm also excellent in many things, okay? I'm extremely creative, so we all have our thing. I can accept the strengths with the challenges. Moving on. Honesty, being honest with yourself. This is important. Why? Because think about it, like, let's say you had a child. You are not going to, or if you do have a child, right? Out of love for that child, you're not going to be like, everything you do is great. No, you are going to hype that child up and say things for their self-esteem. But there's going to come a time where you have to say, no, don't do that. Where you may have to say time out, or whatever your technique is. I'm not a parent, but you do have to correct, right? So sometimes when we're being honest with ourselves, we have to be honest, like, yo, that thing I said to that person the other day, that wasn't cool. Maybe I should apologize. And you just start looking at yourself. Journaling can be good with this, because sometimes we have all these things, all these thoughts trapped in our head, and we don't even realize what we're thinking. So it's better to get it out. So journaling, therapy, as I said, speaking to a trusted friend who you know is good in this area, right, of whatever it is you're dealing with. Because different people specialize in different things. So in terms of acceptance and honesty, I think that knowledge is something that's important for both of those things, right? It's hard to accept what you don't understand. It's hard to be honest about what you don't understand. So learning about yourself is really, really key. All right, so the next thing is empathy. There are so many times where we could be our worst critics. Maybe people are saying things about us, maybe people aren't, but we know that we are going to show up to the ring to fight ourselves one way or another. And it's like, whoa, there are enough challenges. We don't have to be our challenge. But sometimes we just don't know how to give ourselves a break. And when you learn to empathize with yourself, empathy, again, is understanding why you do the things you do. And even if you don't understand why, just understand the emotions that you're going through. Let's say you deal with anxiety. You may not understand why you're anxious in the moment. But while you gain that knowledge, again, knowledge is power. So it applies to empathy too. But as you're gaining that knowledge, you can at least empathize with the fact that anxiety is not a good feeling. It's something that can hold so many people back. So rather than beat up on yourself and say, why do I feel this way? And why am I letting this hold me back? Maybe you take a few deep breaths. Maybe you go for a walk. Maybe you tell yourself, it's okay. You're human. Humans become anxious sometimes. Maybe you do research on what it is you're anxious about. Maybe you game plan. Maybe you find help. Allow yourself to strip away that pride and find help. Whatever it is, when we empathize with ourselves, it makes the journey a little bit easier. And lastly, celebration! It was Oprah who said, the more we celebrate life, the more we have in life to celebrate. You get to celebrate. You get to celebrate. Everybody gets to celebrate. And it's so true. I remember I was going through a moment and my brother was like, Candace, I think you need to implement some more joy. And when I started focusing on having more fun, my brain started to work better. It just did. So celebration can be working with who you are. You know you're a social person, then give yourself, I know it can be challenging. We're still in a pandemic, but finding ways to socialize, whether you want to be outside more or whether you want to take advantage of virtual things. If that's who you are, then figuring that part of your life out. And also taking advantage of free things. There are free things to do too. If money is a thing, there are free ways. A Zoom call. Also celebrating yourself by reminding yourself, and I talked about this, I believe, in honesty. What are things that you can give yourself a pat on the back for? Don't wait for anybody else. What are things you can celebrate? Sometimes we got to make a list. I think it's called a brag sheet. Sometimes we need to make a brag sheet. Write down all the things that we can look in the mirror and say, sis, you dope, you dope. Or for my fellows watching, bruh, you dope. Celebrate yourself, because that's how we get amped up to continue in this journey. We have to. That leads me to this last part of the show. I am patiently moving through celebration and reminding myself that I don't need to wait to have some big career goal or to have a wedding or to have some big life-changing event, a child, to happen in order for me to feel like, no, I get to celebrate. I'm patiently moving through, reminding myself to celebrate. And I celebrate myself for showing up and doing this show. Because I'm not gonna lie to you, there was a lot of anxiety going on. But I said, no, I'm pushing through and I'm doing this. And I'm happy I'm doing it. So I celebrate myself for that. Yes! That leads us to the end of our show. And remember, you deserve to love you, and the world will be a what? A better place when you do. Now, before you go, make sure you like, comment, hit the subscribe button, and then go drink your water. We are hydrated on this channel, okay? And then I will see you next time. Later.